Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. Sources. Navarette versus Valdez 2 and Espinoza versus Ramirez 2 is set for December 7th before the end of this year.
Repeat or revenge?
A pair of title fight rematches will take place December 7th in Phoenix, sources told ESPN. Emmanuel Navarette versus Oscar Valdez and Rafael Espinoza versus Robeisy Ramirez. Navarette dominated Valdez in an August 2023 fight that didn't beg for a rematch, while Espinoza scored ESPN's 2023 upset of the year when he floored Ramirez in the final round of their rousing December bout. Navarette will return to 130 pounds for his third defense of the WBO title. The 29-year-old from Mexico moved up to 135 for a May title fight versus Denis Berinchyk, but dropped a split decision in a lackluster performance. Navarette was attempting to become a 4-division champion prior to the loss. His previous fight was a November draw with Robson Conceição. Navarette's most recent win came via UD over Valdez. Valdez has competed once since the lopsided loss to his countryman, a 7th-round TKO over Liam Wilson in March. Valdez, 33, is a former featherweight and super featherweight title holder. He's ESPN's number 4 junior lightweight, while Navarette is number 1. Espinoza has fought once since he captured the WBO title from Ramirez, a 4th-round TKO win over Sergio Chirino in July. The 30-year-old Espinoza from Mexico is ESPN's number 2 featherweight. Well, listen. Ramirez versus Espinoza was a fun fight to watch. It was entertaining, it was all action, and it was a big upset. But being honest, I'm not all that pressed to see a rematch, even if it has a pleasing aesthetic, because I would have preferred to see Rafael unify titles with one of the other champions at the weight.
It's been such a long time since the featherweight division had a unified champion, a guy holding more than one alphabet title at the same time.
Know that Ray Vargas has been somewhat missing in action since the draw with Nick Ball. Nick Ball went on to become a champion, and he just defended his title.
They're unavailable.
But what about Angelo Leo? Angelo Leo, newly crowned IBF champion, who became champion by knocking out Mexico's own Luis Lopez. Why can't we get a fight between him and Rafael Espinoza? Before Luis Lopez lost the title, Top Rank had Luis Lopez and Robeisy Ramirez, both champions at the same time, and they didn't make the unification match with them. Now, it's a similar situation with Angelo Leo and Rafael Espinoza.
Make the fight!
I can only hope that beyond the Ramirez versus Espinoza rematch, Top Rank will make a fight between the winner of that fight and Angelo Leo.
Next year.
Or Nick Ball. You can mix and match the names. You can mix and match the names of the champions at these weights, and you're going to get a fun fight every single time. The reason the featherweight division isn't more talked about is because of stuff like this. It's so ho-hum.
Nobody's unifying.
Hopefully that changes in the coming year. Over to the Emmanuel Navarette versus Oscar Valdez rematch. So after Navarette beat Oscar, Oscar rebounded off the loss with a common opponent in Liam Wilson. And he did all right. He did better than Emmanuel did against that same Liam Wilson.
Remember that Liam gave Emmanuel a lot of problems.
My memory serves me. He managed to drop Emmanuel Navarette 2 times. He didn't have that same luck with Oscar. Oscar did a better job on that same fighter.
It's not a triangle theory.
That's just for anyone who's thinking that Oscar's finished, that Oscar Valdez might be washed up. If he were, he wouldn't have looked like that against Liam Wilson. I understand after the beating he took against Emmanuel Navarette why someone would ask that question. But if you saw him in the Liam Wilson fight you saw, he still got it.
Can he win the rematch?
And this is gonna sound crazy. As lopsided as the first fight was, I'm actually giving Oscar decent odds to win the rematch. Because Emmanuel is coming off a loss, because Emmanuel will be moving down in weight back down to 130.
Bit of backstory.
So when Emmanuel Navarette moved up to 135 to see about becoming a 4-weight champion, he didn't vacate his title at 130. He hung on to it, likely so that if he lost, he would still be a champion at another weight. And the loss at 135 did not affect his champion status at 130. That's why he still got it. While he was doing that and Oscar was fighting Liam, the fight with Liam was for WBO interim status. So Oscar is Emmanuel's mandatory challenger.
That's the precedent for the fight.
And as lopsided as the first fight was, seemingly with no precedent to do a rematch, that's more or less what set the stage.
Oscar's is mandatory.
And if I'm giving Oscar a chance to perhaps win this rematch, it's because if you saw Emmanuel at 135, he was fat and flabby and fleshy and slow and uncoordinated, perhaps more so than usual. But usually, there's a method to Emmanuel's madness, but up there, he didn't look good.
Now he has to lose all that weight.
Emmanuel Navarette will be a hard night's work and a hard fight for Oscar Valdez, I've no doubts. But this time, with the experiences from the first fight to draw from, and these unique circumstances, he might be able to do it. He might pull it off. He might become a champion again. So I'm going with Oscar to win that fight.
It's not a bad card.
Because of the aesthetic that these fights will yield. They will both be action fights, the both of them, even if they're rematches that we weren't necessarily asking for. They will still be all action fights, all action shootouts. So look for this later on this year in December. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, you may have heard that DAZN is facing a lawsuit for charging renewal fees without consent. The streaming service DAZN, home to numerous boxing events and promoters, is facing a proposed class action lawsuit in the state of California. The 32-page suit claims that the streamer has charged renewal fees without viewers consenting to the charges, according to an article from ClassAction.org, a hat tip to Matthew Brown of Brunch Boxing, whose report brought this story into greater awareness. If the lawsuit's allegations are proven, the fees would be in violation of California's automatic renewal law. In the filing, it is alleged that DAZN uses consumer confusion and inertia as ways of maintaining subscription levels and increasing revenues. The suit adds that online retailers in the state must highlight extension terms in a clear and conspicuous manner, as well as obtain permission from customers before their accounts are charged with subscription renewal fees. It also states that terms surrounding automatic renewals must include an easy option for account cancellations. The suit claims DAZN systematically violates the California automatic renewal law, and that the streamer makes it increasingly difficult and unnecessarily confusing for those wishing to cancel their subscription. The confusion, alleges the suit, has also resulted in accidental or unintentional sign-ups, courtesy of apparent dark patterns on the site. The case added that the defendant's conduct had drawn the attention and ire of customers across the country, with countless angry customers taking to the internet to voice their discontent over the defendant's deceitful tactics. That's assuming the tactics aren't deceitful and just poor infrastructure
or poor understanding.
It's open to interpretation that they're using consumer confusion and inertia to discourage people from unsubscribing, or that the language is not clear and conspicuous enough for those who wish to unsubscribe. Now, I've been subscribed to DAZN for a very long time now, and where some others choose to go the flexi route, the month-to-month route, I pay for the annual in one lump sum because it comes out being cheaper than paying month to month.
I don't think everybody's experience with the platform is the same. I saw some complaining online that they were charged more than once for the same fight. I believe it was the Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney fight, but I didn't experience that myself.
Thankfully, I didn't. On any of the box office fights I purchased on the DAZN platform. I saw some others saying that they purchased the Joshua versus Dubois pay-per-view but were unable to watch it due to an error message.
I didn't experience that either.
So once again, The experience seems unique to the customer. If there is any legitimacy to these claims and these issues these customers have faced with the streaming giant,
Not everybody's experienced them.
further adding to DAZN's negative press, veteran boxing scribe Dan Rafael took aim at the streaming platform for what can only be described as false advertising. That some weeks ago they stated the undercard for Better B versus Bivol was going to be part of your existing DAZN subscription just for it to end up being a pay-per-view.
He said this was the graphic DAZN created and sent out maybe a couple of weeks ago. It was crystal clear, no confusion. Now it's pay-per-view for the undercard in the United States and Canada, should be held accountable for fraud. Dan raises a valid point because up until it was time to watch the show, I was under the impression that I could watch it at no additional charge. I ended up paying.
Even if it wasn't a lot of money, it's still more than I thought I would have to pay. So here's the skinny. Over the years, the DAZN platform has received what I would describe as undue criticism for this and that. Myself, having been a subscriber for such a long time, I've seldom experienced any issues.
Some of the stuff in the lawsuit, I don't know if it has any legitimacy because I didn't experience it myself.
It's only what Dan Rafael is saying that I can attest to. That I saw an advertisement saying that the undercard for Better B versus Bivol would come as part of my existing subscription.
But what are we really talking about? $20?
You're still at liberty not to pay. The decision to purchase the pay-per-view or not is still your own. So if $20 is too much for you, you just don't buy it. It's not fraud. It's not a national incident. It's not the end of the world. And before you complain about giving DAZN $20 for what was a good undercard, why don't you complain about giving Amazon $80 or $90 several times a year?
Since all they're doing are pay-per-views, they're almost doing pay-per-views exclusively, save one show set to go down next weekend. I figure that as a boxing fan or a boxing scribe, if you were going to complain about something,
Sooner complain about having to give Amazon $80 to $90 several times a year than giving DAZN $20.
just being honest.
If what we're doing is holding people to their word here, I remember it was Dan Rafael who said the PBC on Amazon would be doing 12 to 14 shows this calendar year, and several of them would be non-pay-per-view shows.
They didn't do 12 to 14 shows, it's more like 6 or 7, and they didn't do several non-pay-per-view shows, they're only gonna do one.
The one next week. I would think that would have more of his attention than what DAZN's got going on. It seems to me this is just another case of selective outrage in the unstable American boxing scene.
At the very worst, you had to pay $20. $20 to see the undercard.
If that hurts you, you've got bigger problems and need to worry about that than worry about DAZN.
Артур, да! Потому что карма настигла Бивола. Иди к своей нормалихе! Я была права! Ну что, ребята? Ну что? Карма настигла своего засранца. Артур, я рада за тебя. Вперед. Теперь мое дело в суде.
The footage of Dmitry Bivol's ex-wife, Kate Bivol, otherwise known as Ekaterina Bivol,
The quote-unquote victim.
recently divorced ex-wife of the former champion boxer, was apparently doing a watch-along on some podcast, and I'll tell you that the more she makes her story public, the less sympathy I have for her. The more she makes her story public, the more she seems money-hungry.
She wants to be in front of the camera. She wants the spotlight.
So I see why he cheated, if he did in fact cheat. I see why he got himself some side action.
It's the problem with a lot of these broads.
Pretty privilege. They think they're too pretty to get cheated on. You ain't too cute. You ain't too much of nothing. That lying down with another broad won't be a breath of fresh air from your self-centered and narcissistic.
Self-serving.
When I see Kate Bivol take to social media as much as she has the last calendar year, to make all of this public, make it everybody's business, I just see an attention whore.
That's it.
All I see is a jilted and vindictive ex-wife that feels she's entitled to more of Dmitry's money than she actually is. I don't believe a word she says about the abuse and that he's not paying. I don't believe any of that.
Sorry.
If you were expecting a more PC, PG take on the entire situation, I like to think of myself as a good judge of character, and in many instances I am. And all I see is somebody who wants to be a celebrity, wants to be the center of attention, but they can't since they're not with a world champion boxer anymore, though still feeling entitled to live like one. You're supposed to be in the midst of a messy divorce, and this is what you're doing?
Shows her character.
She popped up on social media ahead of the fight, detailing what are supposed to be Dmitry Bivol's injuries over the years. Injuries, surgeries, problem areas. That showed her character, because if nothing else, this is still the father of your children, and I don't think those two little boys want some guy to beat up their dad.
I don't.
If by some chance they do, that likely has more to do with you than them. That you're turning those two little boys against their father. You're weaponizing his children, weaponizing this divorce for financial gain, like we've seen so many times.
How do I know?
She's practically publicizing her divorce in exchange for celebrity, in exchange for attention. She doesn't strike me as the victim of what was a harrowing situation and a bad marriage. She strikes me as an opportunist.
It's in the eyes.
Behaviors. Divorces are generally unpleasant. You want to make it even more unpleasant by making it everybody's business? If you're entitled to anything, that's for the courts to decide.
And it must not be working, because now what you're trying to do is win a battle in a different kind of court. The court of public opinion, though I'm noticing that less and less people are believing Kate's version of the story.
Kate Bivol. Why is she still using that name on her social media when you guys got divorced? Is it because you would fade into obscurity unless you kept it?
Nobody would know who you are.
No more podcasts, no more photo shoots, unless you attach your name to what is now your ex-husband.
She's entitled.
She wants to be famous. That is my impression of her. She is an attention whore. And on that premise, if you've ever dealt with an attention whore, you know you can't put lying past them.
Because they want attention.
They will make things up. They will make things up to get that attention and get it what they want any way they can. That's the kind of person that she strikes me as. Credit to Dmitry for not even addressing her, not mincing words with her, as a public back and forth wouldn't favor him.
You were expecting me to have more sympathy for Kate? I don't even know if Kate's telling the truth.
Get the impression she's not, if you've ever seen this pattern behavior before.
Opportunistic, narcissistic.
Your textbook typical jilted, vindictive ex that doesn't want to just let it go and move on.
She can't, because she wants his money. She knows Dmitry is now making more money, far more money than he used to.
She wants in on that action, even though the marriage is over.
You're not Kate Bivol anymore.
Sorry if I'm leaning too far to one side, but I don't trust these broads. And you shouldn't either. If you have any experience with them, you won't.
You don't need me to tell you.
But if you're some would-be knight in shining armor for every damsel in distress, you're just the patsy. The kind of guy that women like this take advantage of.
The kind of simp. They don't even give the time of day unless you're of some service to them, of some use.
Tell me that there isn't something exploitative about publicizing what is your own divorce and your own tumultuous home life for what? It's really not anybody's business. It's between you, him, and the courts. What kind of person, what kind of woman would do that?
What kind of person would give the other boxer a leg up by saying, these are all the injuries this guy's got?
What kind of person would say me and my sons are for our tour? What kind of person?
I think she crossed the line a long time ago.
For her, this is just about money.